Okay, I hope everyone can hear me. Hello, my name is Jack Hopkins. I'm filling in for Lee, who is sick today, and I had a lot of trouble uh, getting this software to work, which is why I am late. Okay, so let's see if I can normalize everything. All right, so I take it that I'm on. I'm just going to check. Hold on. Okay, I take it that that everybody can see me. I'm not sure. Hold on. Let's see. I have a message here. Okay, wait a minute. I can't tell. Somebody's trying to reach me, but I can't tell. Anyway, I assume that everybody can see me, and so if you would give me a message, that would let me know that I'm in. But today, I'm going to talk about my book a little bit. Here's my book. I wrote a book about the enchantment of the moon, and there it is. It's available on Amazon. And in the book, we talk about happiness. Now, today is Mother's Day, and I want to wish every mother out there a happy Mother's Day. The work that you do and the effect that you have on all our lives is immeasurable. And because of that, we are eternally grateful to you for all of the motherly things and motherly care and motherly love that you have given all of your children. In my book, I talk about the moon, and of course the moon is the archetypal maternal astrological symbol, right? So it's all about women. And so different from the sun, okay? But before we get into that, I did want to mentioned that in the history of Mother's Day, it began in 1908 by the woman by the name of Anna Jarvis, and she decided to honor her mother. But actually, Mother's Day, with the plural, not the possessive, was started in the 1870s after the Civil War. The incredible loss of lives in the Civil War prompted women across this country to take stock of the fact that the care that they needed to supply the sons that they lost, the husbands that they lost, the families that were totally destroyed. They wanted to take control of the politics away from the men that had caused this great catastrophe in our nation's history. And so they lost their husbands and sons and so forth, and those that did come home were really sometimes like terribly mauled by the war. So it was terrible, and they gave women a new sense of a need for empowerment, and that was what the original Mother's Day, with the plural, was all about. In 1869, the women organized the National Women's Suffrage Association and the American Women's Suffrage Association to promote women's rights and have their say in government. So Julia Ward Howe was a key figure in the American Women's Suffrage Association. She was the author of the Battle Hymn of the Republic, which was a very famous song that was sung extensively during the course of the Civil War, and she made a point of it to note that Christ was born of woman. It wasn't until I think the 20s that women actually did get their rights to vote. So there was a long struggle to do that. Um, but she had a vision, and she said of the August dignity of motherhood and its terrible responsibilities. She sat down immediately and wrote an appeal to womanhood throughout the world. Men have always had and always would decide questions by resorting to what she would call mutual murder, which was war, and all sorts of cutthroat competition and cruelty to be able to basically disempower other people, and women in particular. So this whole notion of equal rights for women is so poignantly on our minds today as the Supreme Court decides that they're going to forbid women's right to choose. So this might be the beginning of a long period of time where a small minority of people, almost extensively men, are going to make the decisions about what women can and cannot do in terms of the families that they raise and the children that they give birth to. So it's particularly poignant that this comes, right before Mother's Day. In the book, I would talk about happiness. Now, there's two basic energies in astrology. One is the masculine impulse, which is characterized by the sun. So the sun wants to self-actualize. It wants to accomplish something. It wants to have a legacy. It wants to seize authority and be recognized as being able to contribute something in its highest close-on-use applications. I'm not sure what that means. In its highest form, the sun is all about service. It's about the John Lewises of the world that basically gave up their life in the service of the cause. It's great men and women in history that sacrificed their own personal satisfaction for the betterment of the good. So that in a idealistic way, the sun is all about being able to put your time and energy into being able to deliver something in life that other people can benefit from. That's service. The moon, on the other hand, is your sensitivity towards your involvements. So the moon seeks to find a place of comfort in the world, and yet the world is full of chaos and strife and competition. And so finding that place of refuge, that place of safety in the world, that falls under the realm of the moon. And so traditionally women have always been focused on family and the safety of their families and the well-being of their families, whereas the sun is happy to be able to have accomplished something and be recognized. The moon is only happy when the whole family is happy. Personal happiness gives way to like this larger sense of realizing that your life is so completely connected to the lives of other people that you don't function as a separate entity. The sun, on the other hand, is all about functioning as a separate entity. So these two different forces meet in the material plane, and us as humans need to be able to reconcile those differences. It's not enough to say I'm all for the family without doing anything. You have to be both sun and moon, and in fact it's the merging of those two energies that in the ancient alchemical process they felt as though that was the point of consciousness, that the feminine side of your nature and the masculine side merge together, creating like this mind-body union, and that increases your consciousness, increases your awareness. And awareness is the reason why we came here. That's the only thing that we leave with is our consciousness. The only thing that we came in with is our consciousness. We're given a body, we're given the material world where this all plays out. But these are basically a temporary stage. And it's our awareness that's really important. So on today's day, on Mother's Day, we give a vote of deep thanks and gratitude towards the safety and the loving kindness and the nurturing that mothers all over the world have given to us. They gave us a chance to feel and to want to be free and to want to share our emotions and our reactions. That it's not just about me, it's about us. So this social sense of women throughout history being more attuned to the nuances, the emotional nuances, and the emotional awareness. This is really important. Okay, I do have, let's see if I can put myself together here. Yes. All right. So, happiness. The Greeks would argue endlessly about happiness. Aristotle and Plato would talk about it to a great extent. And after them, the Romans would pick up on many of their philosophical discussions, and you had basic differences in opinion. You have different schools of thought, like the Stoics and the Epicureans and so forth in classical philosophy. But one thing was for certain, that being authentic was the key to finding your happiness. That you didn't find happiness by some artificial means. Happiness was found by honoring this deep sense of divinity within yourself and discovering that authenticity. So many of the enlightened masters like Jesus and Buddha would stress compassion and serving the needs of the underprivileged and so forth as a way to discover this inner sense of oneness with all things, this godliness that we have. In particular, the writings of Jesus would go on to say that God is love. It's all love, and many of the parables would have the father who loved the prodigal son, for instance, the one that put love above commitment, above diligence. You know, the good son was not so prodigal, and yet it was the one that was so bad that the father did not hesitate to love. So the idea is that God was not this kind of like authoritarian, as many of the terrible politics of today's world would suggest, that all authority becomes cruel and self-serving. God was not like that. God was love, eternal love. The founding fathers would picture love as the creator. They would call him the providence. The idea being that he was able to create everything, and we are his creations. At the same time, the idea of the Supreme Being as some sort of higher form of consciousness, and being the perfect manifestation of love, was quite different from many of the primitive notions of gods who would be jealous or revengeful. You had to make appeasements to them. You had to sacrifice sometimes people to them to keep them at bay and so forth. You had to kind of coerce them as if they were an ego or had some sort of a pride that had to be stroked in order to avoid their wrath. The image of God with Buddha, with Jesus, with many of the ascended masters was not that way at all. It was something that basically enlightened you and that woke you up to the divinity within yourself. So we want to talk a little bit about wants versus needs. You start off in life and you want designer jeans, let's say, or you want to go to a concert by your favorite musician, or you want to be in the in crowd, or whatever it is that the want desire uh, you know, attracts you, whatever attracts you. And as you go through life, they change. So a young person might want a Nintendo game. When they get older, they want children, they might want a family, they want a spouse, they want to be able to buy their house, they want a good career, etc. So this passing parade of events in the material world creates a whole series of wants. But underneath that all is the need to be loved, and the need to love. That's all these things really are manifestations of. And so as we peel away the wants, we get closer and closer to the needs, especially towards the end of life, when all of the physical prowess is not there, the career is over, the children are running around with their own families. Many things fall by the wayside, and yet that yearning for completeness, that yearning for love is always there. And it's there at every juncture of our life. So one of the things that causes the suffering that we see in the world is when people oppress us. We all have that spark inside us, and we need to discover it. But we also have free will. So the great temptation is, when you're unhappy, unsatisfied, just steal from the next guy. Just take what you want from him. But in an ultimate sense, you can never take his divinity. That's part of who he is, any more than you can give away yours. So the idea of coercing other people, oppressing other people out of greed, out of a desire for power and so forth, this essentially is madness. And it's entirely within the realm of what humans are capable of doing. If we look at history, it's one oppressive regime after another. Here you had the French Enlightenment, which gave birth to the American Revolution and so forth, and we're the oldest democracy in the world. And yet today, many of the tenets and the spirit that motivated the Declaration and the Constitution is being trampled all over. Authoritative interests. I'll make the decisions. You abide by the decisions. The de-emphasis on critical thinking and education, which is so essential for a democracy. The de-emphasis on individual rights, a woman's right to choose, and all sorts of oppression is just around the corner. It's really something that we thought, I being, coming of age in the 60s, that we had really addressed this, and it was a done deal. We were going to be able to enjoy our freedom. And yet here I am at the end of my life, towards the end of my life. And, the idea being is that all of these things are up for grabs. People are not able to think critically. And when they enter that sort of state, it's fair game for any sort of propaganda, mind control to set in. Many countries like China and Russia are experts in these areas. They control countless millions of people, and the Russians have taken over the news. The state runs the news, so you don't get anything but propaganda. And China is of the same way. We have some freedom of the press in this country, but in many people will just listen to a radical, one radical station, and never consider that there's any alternative to that. And as Goebbels, who was a chief propaganda minister under Hitler, would say, if you repeat the lie enough times, it becomes the truth. And unfortunately, that's kind of what has happened. Okay. All right. So someone's trying to contact me, but if I go away from the screen, I end the I end the session. So I don't want to do that. Okay. There's a famous black writer that said, "No one in the world, no one in history has ever gotten their freedom by appealing to the moral sense of the people who are oppressing them." That's very true. It has to come from ground up. That's what the American Revolution was all about. That, in fact, was the original motivation by the Greeks to form democracy to begin with. That there was a terrible black age in Greek history that basically chopped off the head of Greek society, all of the warlords and landowners and so forth. There was a terrible dark age, and that it reduced all of Greece to just basic common people. And out of that common people, much like the Americans who came to America, that gave rise to democracy. Here in the Ukraine, having been freed from the Soviet Union, they started to taste democracy. And they, for many, many years, I think 8 years if I'm not mistaken, that increased. So that democracy always comes from within. The good news to all of this is that becoming greedy, irresponsible, having an insatiable desire for power and a senseless appetite for hedonism and so forth is not the only alternative. The real good news is that what you are looking for in life is looking for you. That God is inside of you. And that the common everyday things that happen to you each day are a reminder that there is a perfection that exists outside of the foibles of the human ego, outside of the limitations of the material plane that we live on. That there's something much greater and much more inspiring, and it's aware. One of the great things about spiritualism is that we don't kind of look into the void, into the nothingness. That there's a consciousness there. When we look into the future, when we look inside ourselves, it's not this empty, hollow chasm of nothing. It's filled with spiritual energy, and it's our connection to the divine. That in the very darkest night of the soul, the voice of God is always there. I'm not saying that tunnel between one window and the next is not long. It's scary. It requires great courage. But it's there. And the great news, the thing that really is inspiring, is that what you're looking for is looking for you. That in each one of our lives, the love is there. The love that we'll recognize and the love that we're searching, it's there. It's our job in life to pursue it. And here you have the pen of Thomas Jefferson's, 250 years ago, the pursuit of happiness. And this is totally in agreement with the Greeks. He studied the Greeks extensively. And their idea was that you need to pursue happiness. The pursuit is the function like from the sun. It wants to create something. It wants to create that awareness. It wants to be able to respond in a novel way that's appropriate. That's the sun. The moon yearns for the happiness. It motivates the sun to explore every possible way, every possible insight, every possible initiative that you would reach out to other people, to show your love to them, to give, to relate, to become involved. That is the way of happiness. You don't get it by, stuffing your bank account, driving around in cars, going to, up in the air with these expensive things, these expensive excursions, you know, experiencing weightlessness. You don't get it that way. It makes you long for more. What you get is you get a deep satisfaction when you show love for other people and loving kindness. And you elevate your mind to something that's noble and worthwhile and authentic. That's the secret of happiness. It's not easy. There's a lot of struggle that's contained in it, but it is that path that is the path of happiness. The others, you know, maybe temporarily. We know that, for instance, people with more money get better medical care. Okay, so they're generally healthy. Are they happier? No. Research tells you no. Sometimes people at the bottom of the barrel that don't have the nickel to rub against another one have found ways to become happy. So I urge you today on Mother's Day to reflect upon the environment that mothers all over the world have created to care for their children. There's nothing like a mother's love. And to make sure that family had safety. And just think about the people in the Ukraine, those mothers that have sons and husbands back fighting the Russians. They're outnumbered 15 to 1. 15 to 1. And the Russians have this incredible war machine, including nuclear arms, including chemical weapons. So they are staring down the jaws of death, and they are standing up. And so far, they're doing really well. Can you imagine how those women feel when they consider, you know, what might happen? Even the prospects of going back. Let's say they were successful. That country is in ruins. They leveled the major cities. There's no place to go back to. Their families have been destroyed. So you can only imagine what happiness means to these people. Just to be able to touch their sons, to be able to embrace their husbands, would be incredible happiness right now. But for each one of us, we should take a moment to thank our lucky stars that we were able to go through life without having to face that kind of terrible crisis. As Americans, we're staring down the rifle of authoritative takeover of the ideals of our democracy. Things that our fathers fought for in World War II, World War I, even the Civil War. That sense of freedom, that sense of choice. The United States is just like any other country. They have a soiled past. There's been, you know, many terrible things that have happened to people that weren't favored. Okay, just like every other place in the world, and we are no different in that regard. But we have been very lucky because we stood together and we had this environment that came from the ground up, just like the Greeks, just like the Ukrainians. And no one stood in our way. Within a short period of time, relatively speaking, we became the world's greatest superpower. Incredible. You know, American technology is known all over the world. They come to our universities. But it's starting to erode. I often think that the path to healing in this country, women will play a very big role in that regard. Because it's their intention to make people listen to each other, the connection, the confidence, the inspiration, the sense of belonging, the sense of togetherness. These are very, very feminine qualities, and they exist in the hearts of both men and women. And that's what I honor today and Mother's Day. Okay, so I've been talking a long time. I actually have a paper I put together, but nobody came. It gives you happiness. I think there's 21 famous quotes from everybody from Aristotle to Lucille Ball. And I'll try to post it someplace, if I can. All right, so having, said my piece on Mother's Day and happiness, let's just go into a little short meditation, and let's see if we can focus on that wonderful sense of belonging to each other, belonging to God, belonging to something that's infinitely inspiring. Okay. Well, I'm not going to do messages because there's nobody here besides me. So I wish everybody the best, and hopefully next week you're going to see your buddy Lee back on the front and center. And everyone else, I wish you a good week and best of luck in everything that you do.